This year, in the month of May, the world is commemorating and celebrating the fact that 80 years ago, Nazi Germany was defeated and the Allies won in the Second World War. A lot of countries around the world are commemorating the veterans and talking about how this is something that should never happen again. And Russia is celebrating as well by once again throwing yet another yearly massive war parade, which, according to the old great Cold War Soviet tradition, is meant to show the West how mighty and strong Russia is, and that Russia is a force to be reckoned with. Which is great, only if you don't take into account the fact that Russia is currently waging an aggressive war against the people who also helped them to win the Second World War, and how all the countries that Russia was allied against Nazi Germany with are now completely turned away from Russia because they think it's deranged. And it's also great if you don't take into account the fact that Russia had to turn off the internet completely for millions of people at a time because of a possible threat of Ukrainian drone attacks during the victory parades. Which led to stuff like this happening, for example.
Закрытие воздушного пространства города Москвы. Приносим вам извинения за причиненные неудобства. Благодарим за внимание.
So this right here is a video taken on a flight from Uzbekistan to Moscow during the 9th of May, and essentially what happened is that the airspace across Moscow, apart from the internet, was also closed, not letting anybody land at all, so the passengers were diverted to different airports in Russia.
Самолет заправляется топливом. Просим вас оставаться на своих местах, не пристегивая ремни безопасности.
I guess these are the famous, airplanes in Russia now that are, once again, clearly, guys, by the way, a country that is not affected by sanctions in any way. Everything is doing fine. What is this shit, bro? Like, they turned my country into this. I'm so fucking pissed, man.
Мы прибываем в международный аэропорт Пулково, города Санкт-Петербург. Температура воздуха плюс 4 градуса.
So they landed in St. Petersburg instead of Moscow once again, because the Victory Day celebration wouldn't allow them to.
Ребята нам принесли еду. Ну я не знаю, как в 6 утра. Ну ничего, нам еще должны дать кофе.
So the toilets were closed for the entire night. That doesn't sound great either. It's, not a great experience. And yeah, I mean, some people were having fun at Victory Day, but others weren't. And look, I'm not even trying to make fun of the regular people for what they went through. And I'm not even saying that turning off the internet for a few hours is like something completely unbearable, but it is kind of scary that a government can just go ahead and do that and cut off contact with each other and the ability to contact the world and contact each other just like that. For pretty much an arbitrary reason, right? And you guys might say, it's not arbitrary, Ukrainian drones are attacking. Well, it is arbitrary in the sense that Russia was the one who started the war, so just the fact that the internet has to be turned off for millions of people at a time, and that they have to close the airspace over a city with millions of people, I think that clearly shows that Russia isn't as much of a based, perfect country that has no issues and that is just the safest, right? Maybe there are some issues, actually. So, hey there people, it is your boy Roman, your favorite neighborhood Russian, and welcome to a brand new video in which we're gonna be talking about this year's Victory Day in Russia. I'd like to discuss the meaning and the context of Victory Day in today's Russia, especially as a Russian who left Russia. I think I have some decent understanding of this. I'd like to talk about what the Victory Day means for today's Russian propaganda, and also discuss the question of why Russians are so fragile when Victory Day is brought up. Now, to give you guys a very short abridged version of history, as it stands today in modern Russia, Victory Day is a national holiday celebrated every single year on the 9th of May. And it is basically meant to be a day in which the Russian people are supposed to remember what the Russian and the Soviet people had done to fight fascism, to fight Nazi Germany, and to win in the war, to commemorate the veterans, and to remind people that war is something that should never happen again. Well, at least that's what it should be in an ideal world, because clearly, once again, given the fact that Russia is in a state of war right now, clearly it's not gone too well. Now, what's quite interesting is that the Day of Victory was actually not as big of a celebration in the Soviet Union as it is in modern Russia. For example, for a few years right after the victory itself, in the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, the 9th of May was actually a fully working day and not even a holiday. There was no parade and no commemoration whatsoever. In 1965, under Leonid Brezhnev, the 9th of May once again became a national holiday. However, there was still no yearly army parade. The parade was actually only thrown every 10 years. So in 65, 75, and 85, and in 1995, in the new democratic Russia led by Yeltsin, The Victory Day was finally made an annual celebration with an annual parade on a red square, showing all of Russia's might and glory. And the victory of the Soviet people in the Great Patriotic War, as it's called, it was definitely a massively important event and something that should be remembered and that should be celebrated. Unfortunately, with the evolution of Russia after Vladimir Putin has come into power, and with the way Russia has become more aggressive in the world in a sense, the Victory Day, the Victory Parade on the Red Square on the 9th of May, etc., the entire holiday and the entire celebration in a certain way has become usurped and twisted by the Russian government and the Russian propaganda, essentially to promote this idea of Russia's greatness and the fact that everybody else hates Russia and that nobody really appreciates what we've done to the world. While the Victory Day was always meant to be about sort of appreciating what our ancestors have done and also mourning what happens and understanding that war should never happen again. Now it's basically about nationalism, about promoting a certain feeling of Z-patriotism and resentment towards the West. Previously at these Victory Day parades, Russian soldiers would actually march along Ukrainian soldiers, American soldiers, etc. Something that is absolutely impossible to imagine today, because Russia has become a bit of a pariah in the world. It's all about telling the Russian people that, look, the West and Ukraine and all these people, they don't want to deal with us, they don't want to hang out with us Russians, even though they don't understand that we actually saved Europe and we are the ones who gave them the opportunity to live the life that they live. And sort of the idea of the entire celebration itself has kind of been overturned. From a day that is supposed to be all about peace and tolerance and coming together, it is turned into a day of nationalism, of sticking it to the West, of feeling like the main character, and of course it's a day where Russia gets to show off its military prowess. To scare the West and let them know that, мы можем повторить. That is an actual thing in Russia, by the way, that people say, we've done it once and we can do it again, meaning that our tanks, our Russian tanks have already been to Berlin, and if Europe and the West doesn't know how to act, someday, one day, that is going to happen once again. And it's really funny that a lot of Russians like to say that they like to repeat what the Soviet Union has done and how they beat the Nazi Germany, but so far Russia has only succeeded to repeat what Nazi Germany has done by, bombing Kiev at 4 a.m. Good job, guys. Your grandfathers that fought shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainian soldiers, they're definitely not turning in their graves right now or anything. Now look, here's the thing. When I'm making this video, it's pretty much 100% that this video is going to get a lot of hate. People are gonna call me a Nazi and a Russophobe or whatever for simply daring to question the idea and the way in the context in which the Victory Day is celebrated in Russia. Because essentially a lot of Russians are extremely sensitive to this topic. If you just dare to question the army parade on the Victory Day or whatever, if you just dare question the rhetoric that is coming from the Russian government, you essentially are immediately called a Nazi sympathizer, because supposedly, I guess, if you don't like the way the day is celebrated, it means that you don't appreciate what, our people have done against Nazi Germany, which is complete nonsense. Look, I'm just gonna show you one comment, okay? So I posted a video on the 9th of May about ranking Russian food, right? And it's a video that was already ready for a few days. I usually try to post every 4 or 5 days. So it just happened that this video was posted on the 9th of May, the Victory Day, right? And here's the comment from Tatiana. It's 9th of May and you're talking about pirashki. You are just scared that they're gonna spit on you if you talk about the 9th of May. Or are you gonna tell everybody that Americans were the ones who won, together with the great Western Ukraine, who actually was Bandera and fascist? You asshole. And it's like, there's a lot going on here, okay? But this is like the perfect Russian victim complex comments. That is just incredible. Let's digest this one because there's a lot to study here, okay? Like I said before, Russians have a huge victim complex. They think that, Russia has never wronged anybody or has never done anything wrong, and they never understand why any people in the world might have a problem with Russia. And the propaganda tells them all the time that everybody in the West, the regular people, everybody hates them and nobody appreciates what they've done in the Second World War or whatever. So this lady right here is saying that I'm scared that I'm gonna be spat on if I talk about the 9th of May. I guess the assumption here is that, as a Russian, I guess I'm supposed to make some kind of video for the Victory Day in which I'm gonna talk about how, you Westerners are ungrateful assholes who do not realize what the Russian people have done, and, I guess I need to talk about, like, my ancestors or something and their stories of the Second World War. No, I'm not a fucking psychopath. I don't really want to participate in this whole carrying around a picture of your dead grandfather in the streets and, you know, being Z thing, okay? No. And yes, I do have stories of people in my family who have fought in a great patriotic war, who were in the Red Army fighting against the Nazis. My 2 great-grandfathers were involved in it, obviously, they were conscripted. But I think the best way to honor them is to not be a warmongering piece of shit today, okay? It's not about carrying this picture around, not letting him rest, and using what he's done as a tool of propaganda to somehow justify the Russian invasion of Ukraine and talk about how whatever we're doing now is the same as what our grandfathers have done in the Second World War. Because that is what Russian propaganda is doing. They're saying that the people in the zone of the special military operation are committing as much of a great act as my grandfather did, who fought against the Nazis. No, fuck you, I don't think so. He was way better. But yeah, I guess she's saying that I'm not trying to really say what I really think about the 9th of May because I'm afraid I'm gonna get shat on by my Westoid viewers, you know, because I'm gonna be too patriotic and too Z. And then she instantly goes to the other end of it when she's saying, you know, oh, I know, you're gonna be telling everybody that the Americans are the ones who won, along with the great Western Ukraine, who was Banderite and fascist. So like, again, Russian victim complex on full display, talking about how, again, trying to debate who were the ones who really won. Was it Americans who really won? Was it Russians who really won? You fucking idiots. You are missing the fucking points. The whole idea of never again is so that we don't have to have these fucking debates, okay? It was a collective effort. And yes, the Soviet people who lost 27 million, I do think they have contributed massively and probably more than anybody. And yes, I do think that without the Soviet Union, nobody would win the war. But everybody was instrumental. America was also instrumental. The Land-Lease and so on. Everybody played the part in destroying Hitler. And the fact that you have such low self-esteem that you have to derive it from the fact that we were the ones who won in the war. No, again, like, get some hobbies, go outside, stop. Get something that you can yourself be proud of. And yeah, she's obviously making the point that, you know, Ukraine was, you know, fascist or whatever in World War II, which is kind of funny, like, because obviously they want to say that modern Ukraine are like the descendants of the fascists in World War II, actually, which is nonsense. Ukraine was another Soviet republic, had plenty of people in it. Most people in Ukraine were not Nazi collaborators in World War II. Guess what? Russia also had Nazi collaborators in World War II. I'm talking about Team Vlasov, right? And actually what's funny is that they had the exact same flag. They use the exact same flag as modern Russia does, so what is going on there? I have no idea. Crazy. Probably Nazis, right? Again, like this was a comment on a video about Russian food in which I rated whether I like pirashki or fucking pelmeni more, okay? And this is the thought that the person had. This is the fucking psychosis that the Victory Day and the Russian propaganda induces in people. Like, you cannot come up with this. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you for giving us this example. I love you. And you might say, okay, Roman, you're focusing too much on this one case. This cannot be happening on a massive scale or anything, right? Well, how can I say this to you guys? It is. Because Victory Day and the Victory Day celebration and the idea of, once again, this like Russian supremacy of the fact that we were the ones who really won the war and stuff, it's so deeply rooted in people's brains that, you know, I think it's fucking over at this point. I mean, the thing is that currently in the Russian law, you actually cannot criticize the Victory Day in any way publicly, or you might actually go to prison. For example, this happened to the Russian rapper Morgenstern, who I've talked about on the channel many years ago. He's like a crazy character. But anyway, this guy, I think in like 2020, had an interview with a prominent Russian journalist, and he was asked about the Victory Day and, you know, what it means or whatever. And Morgenstern, being like a young Russian guy, essentially kind of gave a lukewarm take that a lot of people have had before. The take being that, yes, Victory Day and, you know, commemorating what our people did against Nazi Germany is very important, but maybe perhaps there could be a different way it could be approached, right? Maybe perhaps we don't need to throw these huge parades and, you know, spend all this money on all this fanfare when you actually have struggling people and like struggling war veterans who are not getting shit. And, you know, this is like, once again, an old lukewarm take at this point. It's almost kind of a cliche to talk about how Russia is spending so much on these parades and yet the veterans and the people who actually need this help and this money, they're not getting anything, right?
Разрешите вам вручить?
Ветерана Великой Отечественной войны Петра Коробкина специально вывезли в красивую квартиру, чтобы снять вручение знака «Почетный гражданин Приморья» мэром Находки. Сам ветеран живет с сожительницей в старом деревянном бараке.
It is a cliche to say this, but it's true, and it only keeps getting more true with every single year. Nobody's trying to make the point that, like, Germany was in the right or something, and nobody is even trying to say that America is the one who won, okay? As a Russian, I'm not gonna give America the fact that they won, okay? We won together. People are just trying to say that perhaps we could have a different approach to the holiday, that's it. And that is exactly what Morgenstern said in the interview, and right away, right after the interview was published, immediately, tons of these like pro-governmental activists started reporting Morgenstern to the police, and the head of the investigative committee of Russia himself has expressed that Morgenstern and his work needs to be inspected for signs of extremism and essentially rehabilitation of Nazism, yes. That is an actual law in Russia, by the way, according to which, if you have some thoughts about the history of World War II, like for example, if you'd like to suggest that the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were not exactly against each other at all times, if you dare to suggest that, and also if you dare to criticize the Victory Day in any way, you get a criminal case for the crime of rehabilitating Nazism. So essentially, talking or criticizing about the Soviet Union in the context of the World War II in any way means that you are like supporting Nazi Germany. According to the Russian law. And people actually go into prison for this, by the way. And Morgenstern, the Russian rapper, actually had to flee the country right after this happens. And since then, he pretty much is now, you know, like a persona non grata in Russia. He's like a foreign agent and everything. He's just hated by everybody because, once again, he had some thoughts on the Victory Day. Clearly a normal country that has free speech, by the way, right? And this year, once again, guys, we have even more evidence of the fact that, you know, the Victory Day induces some sort of insane psychosis in the Russian people. So here's what happened. In Moscow, a fashion store, a brand, a sort of a concept store called Monochrome, made this post right here saying that on the 7th and the 9th of May, our store on Большая Dmitrovka, which is like the center of Moscow, our store is only going to be open from 2 p.m. We are very sorry for all the inconvenience that could be caused. And whoever posted this on the brand's Telegram channel also said, what is the reason for this? Well, it is the parade. Why is this happening? Well, for the reason that nobody cares about other people's business. No comments, as they say. So yes, in a certain sense, you could say a bit of a main character post, like who gives a shit about one store. Stuff like this happens in a lot of different countries, right? And I understand that the owners of the shop might be annoyed with the fact that the parade is happening and they have to close the store because probably there's like military vehicles and tons of people coming through the streets or whatever, but you know, whatever, just one store posted how, you know, the parade makes it a little bit inconvenient for them to work or something. Surely there's gonna be a normal response from the Russian people, right? Let's check it out. First of all, immediately the comments started blowing up, saying this is a very strange post if I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that this is the first time that you're experiencing a situation like this when you have a store in the very center of the city. In Russia, we have traditions that we respect. Yes. I forgot to ask you. Thank you for your opinion though. And then the lady comes back and says, this is something that you can lose very easily, but something that you cannot bring back. Respect. Are these supposed to be the people whose feelings are not easily hurt? Then another person says, you are such an angry Russophobic piece of shit that I for never in my life will once again go into your store. I understand that you probably do not care about just one client. However, I hope that your disgusting post with such disgusting responses is going to be seen by a lot of people and that a lot of people will follow in my example. My guy, like, I think Russian people are gonna call anything Russophobia now. If they get caught in line, they're gonna say it's Russophobic now. It's insane. Well, what happened is that this post apparently made its way to some other parts of the Russian internet, and immediately content creators who made some collaborations with this brand started, like, saying that they're no longer doing it, that this brand is dead to them.
Я отметить монохром в своем подкасте как один из концептуальных, интересных, уникальных российских брендов. Как должен бренд выглядеть? Это монохром. Как они, в общем-то, перечеркнули полностью мое мнение и вызвали желание, ну, как-нибудь, как это, удалить их из подкаста, но, к сожалению, это невозможно. Что же они такого сделали? На 80-летие Победы бренд Монохром решил отметиться, правда, неуважением, а недовольством. В своем официальном аккаунте в Телеграме они пожаловались, что им, бедняжкам, пришлось закрыть магазин аж до 14 часов 7 и 9 мая из-за Парада Победы. Какой ужас, правда? У нас праздник национального масштаба святой день для большинства и россиян, и, в принципе, жителей бывшего Советского Союза. А монохром страдает, что им перекрыли дорогу к кассе. Серьезно, ребят? Премиум – это не про то, чтобы быть вечно доступным. Премиум – это про то, чтобы быть к месту. Чтить ценности и культуру того общества, где ты зарабатываешь деньги.
My god. This is one of my favorite types of content, this fucking like Z fashion influencer. Like they're so out of touch with reality, but again, like you see a big issue here. Russians essentially treat a mild criticism of the parades, which is not an inherent part of the Day of Victory, which shouldn't be an inherent part of the Day of Victory. They treat it not only as an attack on the memory of the soldiers of World War II, which is not what it is, they also see it as a personal attack at them, because if you have any criticisms of the Victory Day or the Victory Parade, you are now a Russophobe. You hate Russians, apparently. Good job, Vladimir Putin, good job propaganda, you made everybody fucking brain dead. These people have like 2 IQ, it's insane. Actual Z NPCs. Then the creator of the store of the brand actually responded on her personal telegram saying, I did not even think that my post about closing the store could cause so much negativity. I am very interested to hear out from these same exact commenters who are writing this stuff to me when they are gonna have their internet turned off. And also I'd like to hear what they have to say in the moment when they're gonna be stuck in traffic jams when roads are gonna be closed off in the city. But of course it's really easy to write something heinous to a complete stranger and basically say that he is guilty of every single possible sin. I hope all of you are feeling relieved right now. And yeah, I mean, she spit in facts once again. She was absolutely like being a main character and a bit of a Karen maybe with her post, but like if Russia was a sane country with people who are not in a state of psychosis at all times, who are trained to look for spies and Russophobes everywhere, right? This wouldn't have happened, okay? And she is absolutely on the money. These people are absolutely coping because their lives are not going the way they want to, so they're screaming at people online, calling them out for being not patriotic enough, because it's of course the people who are, you know, criticizing the Victory Day. These are the people who are the reason why your life is such an unstable piece of shit and such a circus. Yes! This is why we will never have nice things. And here, guys, is where I delivered the final nail in the coffin to this story. It actually also turned out that the lady who created this brand, Monochrome, is also originally from Ukraine. And you guys can only imagine what people's reaction was. Very normal, right? The FSB needs to pay attention to these people. She needs to be gifted a history school book, so that she finds out how much the Soviet people had done for the victory and that this is the most important celebration for us. Of course, we do not care about your business. The entire country is celebrating this holiday. We absolutely do not care about you at all. Yes, you commenters. You clearly don't care at all, of course. Very, very sad. I've looked at some of this stuff, looks pretty interesting, but now, out of principle, I will not buy anything from this place. Oh yeah, and I wonder, how many of them, like her, are there in Russia that states? And how many of them are still trying to fight their way in through Sheremetyevo, which is like an airport in Moscow? And another one, very strange that they still haven't been paid any attention to, and especially now we need to basically put them in prison. So yes, according to Russians, if you were born in Ukraine, that makes you like a Ukrainian neo-Nazi by blood, and you are like a dangerous element inside Russia that needs to be eradicated, I guess. That's what these people are essentially saying, and yeah, you know, once again, this is a healthy and normal reaction of a people who understand what the point of Victory Day is, and who clearly understand what their grandfathers were actually fighting for in the war. Yes, these are normal, well-adjusted people that are totally not fucking Z propaganda NPCs. Jesus Christ, I hate my life, man. Fuck. Why was I born in this godforsaken country, man? They will never get it. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot more to discuss when we talk about Victory Day. This is such a huge blast of propaganda that's been fed to the people for like decades now at this point that, you know, the programming is almost like, there's almost nothing you can say to these people at this point. But yeah, as a Russian who left Russia, all I have to say is, you know, I hope you guys are having a great time. I just cannot wait for the cope of Russian Kremlin bots in the comments of this video talking about how, you know, planes that fall apart and the internet being turned off in the country because people are scared of drones is normal. Yes, please let me know how that is normal. I know you will cope and defend, you know, absolutely anything. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and for those who are sane, I hope you can honestly, sincerely reflect on the events that happened in the Second World War and understand what is being done to divide people. And I hope you will continue to celebrate this day without turning it into a massive show of nationalism and how, you know, we are the master race or whatever, and how we are once again gonna show Europe what for. No, that is kind of not the point, and I think once again, your grandfather would be turning in his grave. That being said, guys, if you did enjoy this video, if you did enjoy the things that I had to say in it, please make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and support me on Buy Me a Coffee or become a channel member. And yeah, guys, I'm gonna see you in the next one. Peace.